All right. Okay. So let's keep it rolling. Who here is familiar with natural law or has heard this concept over the years? Great. Who's familiar with Mark Passio? Yeah, Mark spoke at our event a couple of years ago. Well, our next speaker is somebody who I think is going to rock your world and blow your minds. And for those who are new to natural law, he's going to give you everything you need to know. And to those who are familiar with it, I think he's going to help you understand why it's important. You know, we're pursuing freedom, we're pursuing parallel societies, but if those parallel societies don't have the right foundation, maybe they're not going to last. So I want you guys to give a warm welcome, nice big applause to first-time speaker Will Keller. All right, let's give it up for Will one more time. Will's going to blow your minds, guys. We'll pop it up.
Awesome. All right, greetings. Yes, first time at the TPR event, and I'm thrilled. A lot of great conversations, and I'm excited to deliver this talk because what I can offer you, I saw a lot of hands went up that have heard of natural law. And I think this is a topic that needs to be talked about more from different perspectives, and I'm going to offer some really good clarity today. So we'll go to, so the title of my presentation is Natural Law, the Blueprint for a Free Society, Why Freedom Must Be Designed on Moral Ground. And this whole event is about solutions and building and constructing. And the process of building something is objective, right? It starts in the mind. You have an idea. Then you create a blueprint. You have your foundation, your structure, the aesthetics. These are all aspects of the natural world that are objective. So I'm going to bring out a question. How can we build a free society if we do not understand what freedom is? This might sound interesting to a lot of people here, but I think this is important. My motto is simplify the profound. If we can't explain and describe what freedom is or how we achieve freedom, then we're going to have a lot of issues, a lot of mentally perceived confusion amongst a lot of circles and groups of people. So the missing blueprint, the most important knowledge for human freedom was never taught and is being ignored. This is something that, as we're in our childhood, parenting, public schooling in general, right? Even in culture itself, this information is completely missing. And the small amounts of teachers and educators, it is being vastly ignored by the population, right? So without it, societies confuse control for order and obedience for harmony. Classic government social engineer tactic to invert reality. Like Alec talked about in his presentation, it's all about perception management. Why? Because your perception and your worldview, the information that you hold in your mind and in your heart, dictates the choices and actions that you take. So perception management for behavior control. So the information that you hold, this is what I call the missing blueprint. We have the idea, we want freedom. We want to achieve freedom. We want to build communities, right? What's that blueprint? And this is what we're going to dive into today. So first I want to lay the foundation, right? Foundation is the first things. And of course, this is nature, right? Nature itself is the greatest mentor. Some of the greatest minds in history, Nikola Tesla, Victor Schauberger, Wilhelm Reich, Royal Rife, all of these people observed nature and then mimicked it, right? To create incredible systems. And you could see the image on there. That's Bill Mollison. We had fantastic permaculture topics yesterday, and this is the interaction and the relationship that we have not only with each other but within life, right? So reality is relational. Nothing in nature exists in isolation. Everything operates through relationship and interaction. Understanding these relationships is the first step towards understanding order, responsibility, and freedom. Miriam started this whole event talking about relationships, right? Everyone and everything is interconnected. So this is the relationship. Relation to what? Well, relation to the people in this room, to my friends, family, excuse me, my daughter. But one thing that's not talked about is your relationships to principles, values. These things in the world are so easily discarded, left and right, for the majority of people. What are those principles and values? This is important because this is what lays the structure and the foundation. So as we're talking about nature and how everything is interconnected and it's based on relationships, what is the condition of those relationships? Nature itself is lawful, meaning nature operates according to consistent principles called laws, not randomness or opinion. These governing patterns are what we call laws of nature or natural laws. Most people understand the laws of physics. Even modern science understands that these are constant governing dynamics, which is the definition of law itself. Law does not change. It is not whimsical. It is objective and binding. So, but what we don't talk about is the metaphysical laws. Excuse me, give a drink some hydrogen water. Now, the metaphysical laws obviously are energetic and based upon consciousness. And we need to understand our place in reality, in nature. There's so much back and forth about objective and subjective, and here is the balanced and the truthful approach. We are each individuals having a subjective experience in an objective reality. That objective reality is the laws of nature. It is natural law, the governing dynamics that construct reality, reorder the basis on how everything operates and how everything interacts. And we can call this natural law. Now, natural law can apply to all kinds of different things. You can talk about it in every category. Health, it's a science. But what we don't talk about is how we interact with each other through relationships and the purpose of that. The principles that respond to action and not perception. This is the type of natural law that I'm talking about. We're talking about morality. Morality has a lot of baggage. When you say that word, most people immediately think of religion or relative morality. But I'm here to say that morality is not an opinion. It's based in science, it's based in nature, it's based in inherent natural law. So right and wrong are not matters of preference or culture, time or location. They can be objectively evaluated and by whether actions cause harm or support well-being. Very easy. The definition of morality from Latin moralis is the difference between right and wrong. Now, I understand a lot of people here might know this, right? What is the definition of a right? It seems simple, but if we don't know our definitions and we can't express this to other people, if you don't know, then you can be taken advantage of. And this is the whole premise of what government does to the populace because they don't know these simple definitions. A right is any action that does not cause or initiate harm to another sentient being. Even the wrongdoings, we can look at that because there's an infinite amount of right actions that we can take. But if we look at it in the negative, what are the wrongdoings? We can sum those down to just a few, right? Murder, assault, rape, theft, coercion, and deception. Those are all a external taking of something from someone else. I'm not talking about vices. Vices are internal. They're part of that subjective experience. But as we relate to us and individuals, we are going to interact. What's that condition of that interaction? Is it initiating harm or is it supporting well-being? And the root of slavery. We all here understand that humanity is at a very tough position. Through their ignorance, they are supporting and condoning their own oppression, right? The question is why? Asking that question leads you on a quest. And that root of slavery is when morality becomes relative. There is no shared standard to identify harm. In that vacuum, coercion, domination, slavery take hold. So absolutely, morality is objective from that definition that I gave you. What does that give us? It gives us a structure, an objective standard by which we can gauge the condition of our relationships, right? This is very important. And it's objective, it's across the board. Doesn't matter, different time period, location, culture. Human beings can write something down on paper. It doesn't matter. Morality itself is objective because of the initiation and the harm created or the support of well-being. Now, natural moral law is the objective framework that governs human interaction through cause and effect. It reveals how behavior produces harmony or disorder in a shared reality, right? So this is the natural law. If we're talking about electricity, there are natural laws that govern that, right? You don't want to touch a ground wire. You don't want to jump off a cliff. You don't want to touch fire. Objective laws say that the fire will burn you, you will fall down, or you will shock yourself, right? There is a cause and effect there. And from when I talked about what the rights are and the wrongdoings that lead to that objective standard, we can really sum it down to a phrase of don't steal and don't kneel. We understand the non-aggression principle, the self-defense principle. Both of those together and married, you have self-ownership, meaning you are responsible for your actions and behaviors. Now, this is widely controlled through institutions and government. Why? Well, if you can control the meaning of right and wrong, you absolutely can be the arbiters of truth and the arbiters of right and wrong, meaning whatever you say goes. And that's exactly what these institutions and governments been doing for a long time. So they seek to define right and wrong because moral control shapes perception, therefore shapes your choice and behavior. When conscience, right, with knowledge, that's what conscience is. The exercise of conscience is actually acting. It's an action, but conscience, the voice that we hear, is knowledge itself. Con being with, sciere being science, being knowledge, with knowledge of what? right and wrong, objective morality. So when conscious is outsourced, responsibility and freedom are weakened and absolutely completely destroyed. This is why objective morality, natural rights are very important to discuss and have these conversations. Because as I asked that question, how do we know what freedom is? And I put an emphasis on that. That's because freedom is an effect of a cause. And that cause is through individuals understanding objective morality, right and wrong, and then making the conscious choice to perform those right actions. Grant talked about right livelihood. Thank you. So freedom cannot be imposed or granted by human authority. It emerges only when individuals and communities align with natural moral law. This is that structure that we need to understand. And I'm here to tell you that we need to talk about that more often. Objective morality, natural rights, as the structure, understanding that nature, natural law is cause and effect. So if we are striving for freedom and a moral community, those intentions, those are the first principles. Principles itself, principal means first things. You put it first always. Lainey's talk was fantastic, and she had the little sheet of, what is your intentional community and what do you stand for and what do you provide? And then it had the value systems. Those value systems need to be understood, that it's always the first principles of morality, right and wrong, and right action. Because from there, that's the starting point that's going to dictate the condition and the health of an individual, of a community, of a society, of the relationship we have with nature, and as the stewards of this planet through that action. Okay, cool, perfect. Didn't start my timer. So here's another natural law. I do believe that as humans evolve, we will come to know it's directly proportional. Human evolution and the understanding and the application of the knowledge of natural laws, right? So as we align ourselves morally, we are going to elevate and evolve. That's what evolution truly is. It's not the propagation of genes, right? It's consciousness. This has been proven through epigenetics. So what's that information that takes us from a very poor situation on this planet to one of freedom and right action, right? Unslaved. And of course, this starts with individuals unslaving themselves. Here's a natural law principle. Awareness reveals choice. The moment you become aware of how things work, you realize you were never trapped. You were unconscious of the choice. Awareness reveals choice. You take in information. That information is added to your worldview, which dictates your behavior. Right? So this is why this is so powerful. Everyone here is taking in valuable information from these presenters and fantastic topics. That is information that's added to your worldview, where you can go back home and act upon that. Because nature always requires a sacrifice. And I don't necessarily mean that as a dark term. It's both. It's positive and negative, right? Through humanity's ignorance, we are sacrificing freedom, sovereignty, consent, our children, the most important, right? So the information is so valuable because the law of manifestation requires action. That's what nature requires. If you want to get from point A to point B, action is required itself. Life is not passive, it's interactive. From the blueprint to symbiotic systems. So, knowledge alone is not enough. Natural law must be lived, taught, and modeled. When moral education becomes culture, parallel systems rooted in moral first principles will thrive. Now, nature always wants harmony, balance, symbiosis. There's so much romanticizing in nature, right? Nature is all pure abundance. I agree with that. Or, the materialist is like, oh, nature's all chaos and death. Yeah, I agree with that. The truth is nature, it is. It just is. It's everything. It's all encompassing. We can understand nature. Nature itself is the blueprint for humanity to understand ourselves and how to operate in the world. We observe it. We mimic it. We explore. We experiment. This is the scientific method. But through our coming into knowledge and activation, there's something that's very important that is lacking in many of the spiritual and truth communities, and that is communicating what you have come to know and learn. In the modern age, we call it being a content creator, being an influencer. Yes, that is the scientific method. You come to a conclusion, you put out your results. This is why I'm up here, right? I'm putting out my results. Like, look, objective morality must be understood to get humans into a condition of symbiosis. And the blueprint is objective morality and natural law, right? The inherent dynamics that generate, that give us the effect of freedom. Moral right action is the cause. Freedom is the effect. Of course, the government institutions and, they want to sell you on all these different pathways and modalities of being the arbiter of spirituality or creation. You're here now, in it, being alive, existing, interacting with the natural world. There is no middleman. There's no middleman for freedom. There's no middleman for your spirituality. It's you having that subjective experience in objective reality. Reality, right? The one verse, the one song. The real reset is returning to basics. Freedom is built by restoring how we interact with one another by choosing moral action, taking responsibility, and influencing the world through activation. The future doesn't need to be reinvented. It needs to be remembered. This is the whole crux of my work. Thank you. The whole crux of my work is that humanity has forgot the most basic, foundational, vital information, the elements of life, the elementary. And through this ignorance, we have developed a sickness, a condition, right? Alex Gray is the artist on the image for the acorn. This is a powerful symbol. It's free will choice, right? But free will is only potential. It's not actual. Meaning there are things that you need to do to activate your free will choice. How do you know you're not under mind control, right? There's a process to come to understand yourself, your thoughts, emotions, and action. Is there internal confusion? This is why moral law is so important, understanding right and wrong, understanding the condition that you are in. Because when there's internal confusion, conscience says one thing, heart says another, and your actions speak otherwise, then you absolutely are in internal confusion, and that will lead to external control, and that's not free will actualized. It's being influenced. It's being mind controlled. So the acorn is a perfect example of that. Acorn and an oak tree, genetically identical. Same. So what's the difference? Right? You can't get lumber out of an acorn. So the acorn itself is the representation of activation, of willpower activating under the right conditions. The acorn's got to be in the soil. It does that during winter, so the soil is saturated and the hard shell gets soft, and then it can sprout and become an oak tree. You are in the People's Reset. This is the conditions to actualize free will, right? To become that acorn, or what we call seeds. You're planting seeds. How do those seeds become an oak tree? Through willpower and care and activation. So I changed, this is my last slide, and I changed the words on it. Natural law, the blueprint for a free society is morality. Freedom can only be designed on moral ground, right? Thank you. So understanding that blueprint, that nature has provided everything for us to succeed, it's on us to understand that our structure within our own individual lives, within the family dynamic, in our communities, must be based on that foundational structure of morality, but talked about and expressed and educating other people about this basic foundational information so we can pass it on to the next generations. I love how Derek touched a couple times on the 7 generations. This is an indigenous concept I very much align with, being an animist. This is also a concept that the social engineers very, very well understand and implement. If you can plan out the next 7 generations, then you have that condition in the palm of your hand. So what is the available information being talked about today? It needs to be the blueprint of objective morality and natural law, so we can have the true People's Reset that expands from this 0 point out into the external world. And everyone here is an acorn. So let's get it. There we go.
Yeah, make some noise for Will Keller, everybody. We're going to take some questions. We still got time for questions. You down for some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right. We got one over here. And anybody else, feel free to raise your hand. We'll get to you next.
Thank you for the presentation, brother. Yeah, I really appreciate the slide about the moral relativism. I think it's important to bring that into awareness. Quick question, and forgive me if this is a little bit metaphysical, so it would be great if you can provide a response that's more grounded. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius was quoted in saying that signs and symbols rule the world, not law and order. And I'd love to get curious to know what your thoughts on that, about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I love metaphysical questions. I think a lot of times cultures and esoteric knowledge are talking about a lot of the same things just from different perspectives. So here's an example on how I would answer your question. Mathematics is a completely artificial, man-made construct. It's our interpretation of nature itself. Nature doesn't work in numbers. It works in pressure mediation and ratios. Yet we can find the golden ratio in everything, the torus field. So it's our interpretation that leads us to build a language called mathematics or arithmetics. So yes, the signs and symbols are absolutely a part of nature's experience. And us as human beings, this is what separates us from the animal kingdom. I do not say human beings are animals. We are in a totally different category. We are an integral species of the mineral. Well, first, the element, the mineral, the plant, the animal, and we are the human. So we have that availability and the capacity to see the signs and symbols that are what? They are pieces of information that we can use for our worldview and our perception. Because ultimately, that's what it's about. It's aligning your perception, your worldview, with objective laws in nature to function. So I would say they're one and the same. Yep.
Thank you for that, Will.
For
We
sure,
got one
appreciate
more right here.
All right, thank you very much for that. That was great. Just something I wrestle with myself personally. I have a question about how natural law would apply towards animal husbandry, animal stewardship, and therefore what would be the most ethical way to take an animal's life when we're living in those contexts. Thank you.
Great question. Absolutely. Yeah, when I had the definition of a right, I said sentient beings. So I'm actually absolutely talking about animals. There's so much division in the vegan, all these different types of realms. I myself is a vegetarian for 7 years. I do think there is a symbiosis that can be achieved. There's no handbook in life. That's what religion is there for. Oh, we got the handbook. I do understand that we can come together and understand what rights are, what true stewardship is, and we can build systems that are in more symbiosis or in symbiosis with nature itself. So we need to understand that there's a progression to the work that we need. And my work itself is just explaining, like, look, we need to understand what rights and morality is. And that absolutely applies to the animal kingdom. And getting in a more balanced position, I think that's something that we can achieve later on down the road, but also in our own individual life, for sure.
Thank you, Will. We got a few more here.
Cool.
Great presentation. I, in my own journey, wasn't able to hear these sorts of messages until I did the inner work, the shadow work. What are your thoughts in terms of any sort of prerequisite work one can do to then be able to understand truly this knowledge and embody it in their thoughts, emotions, and actions?
Great question. Absolutely. Yes, we are the 0 point. So it always starts with that internal ecology. Jerry mentioned thoughts, emotions, and actions. Unity consciousness. Thoughts, emotions is the metaphysical realm. That's the realm of consciousness and energy, which is the realm of causation, right? That's where everything comes from. Then your actions is what is the effect that goes into form. So that internal work must come first. And this is what, we're here to take in that information, sit with it, process it, digest it, right? And then apply it into your lives. So I agree 100%.
All right, here we go.
Thank you. Superb presentation. Question is, what are the next steps to apply natural law as you presented?
Very good. Very good. So remember that natural law, to generate a condition, the effect of freedom, right? It's based upon numbers. This is why we are enslaved, because the majority of minds hold certain information, which they take certain actions. That generates the conditions. So it is not only quantitative, it's qualitative. Qualitative is understanding the truth and having that information and then applying it to ourselves, but also influencing and educating others, right? So we can amplify that field of influence to create, to manifest a certain condition. It's a profound fleet that we are trying to do, but absolutely in your own personal lives, understand the relationships that you have with others, with nature itself, and focus on that, and eventually understanding that education is where we need to go. So
Awesome. Thank you, Will. We
Yeah.
got a couple more here.
First of all, great presentation. I fully agree with you on everything. The question that I have is regarding how this applies to, for example, like most people here are upstanding citizens and everything, but constantly, for example, the right to travel in a private automobile, the state will consistently come after you for speeding or parking or doing whatever, just because, you know, they're trying to serve and protect, aka they're trying to extort you for money. For a victimless crime where, you know, nobody's property has been damaged, nobody has physically been damaged or anything like that. How do you apply this to that when the state, like, for example, in the United States, the Supreme Court has upheld the right to travel in an automobile privately, but at the state level, it's just they have so many laws that they can throw at you and throw you in jail for whatever they want, basically.
yeah, great question. One thing I didn't even really mention about natural law itself, right? This is non-man-made. Definitions are important because that gives you clarity of meaning. Natural law, natural from Latin naturalis, which means inherent to creation, non-man-made. And then law is an unchanging, governing dynamic, unchanging, right? So yes, in the condition that we are in, one of slavery, and it's good to have an accurate perception. You have to have an accurate diagnosis of the problem, which is why Derek Brose's documentary series, Pyramid of Power, is so important. You need to understand the position that we are in. Because yes, do you have the right to travel? Absolutely. If a goon pulls you over, right, an order follower, and is trying to extort you, in nature, you have the right to defend yourself. Would that be wise in that time or congruent for health? Not really. You have to make that, you have to use your own discernment, right? How many people understand objective morality and natural law in the populace? Not that many. So, you know, standing up and trying to have kinetic self-defense, that right remains. But would it be wise? I think in this day and age, why we still have profound tools, microphone, computer, the internet, we're able to communicate with other people all across the world. Look at this event right here. It's fantastic. We need to utilize these tools for education of objective morality and natural law.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again. I felt like your presentation was nourishing. You know, it was just really setting me in the right mode. I often think about at this point in our history where we are with looking at natural law and tech and how these two things have worked together, because clearly the tech is part of the evolution that we're putting on the reality. And you know, I mean, some things come up like the weirdness of maybe I'm getting on Facebook, for better or worse, and I call it like psychic Facebook. I like find someone on there, or they message me and I was just thinking of them, and it's like 10 years ago that I last talked to them. But my concern is, you know, where do we need to be getting back to the base reality? Like I went to a talk the other day, and it was very interesting. We were talking about 5G, and this person said that they had they had kind of evolved themselves to be kind of immune to it. But then I also know from scientists that I talk to that 5G is very harmful on insect life. Like they just can't handle it. So while we're doing these, adaptations with the tech, is that really reflecting the laws of nature? It's definitely influencing it. Where's the line, I guess, is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, tools. I'm not anti-tool, right? Technoslogi, which are tools for logic. It all depends on the wielder of those tools. So the social engineers are using the knowledge of natural law and morality and how to manifest a certain condition. They're using that knowledge, that tool, as a weapon, right? We can obviously use that for good. So yes, I'm very much, AI is a great example. Could we use AI in a certain form and fashion that has integrity and ethics? Yes, I think so. And then there are certain technologies that really should not exist that are extremely harmful. And it's very reflective of the collective consciousness that humanity is in on their level of understanding of morality.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. I think we got time for one more.
Great.
I just want to say I think it's really important not to get too comfortable with our presumptions about some of these higher level ideas. I think we keep on having to lift the ceiling. There is always a ceiling in our thinking. And some of the elements that you have outlined to have a moral society, I have seen them applied with in one particular community I lived in for a while, an intentional community. And everyone in that community, bigger than this group here, felt that they were applying those things. But a lot of, in the end, it devolves into, I don't know just how to say this, but we are prone to making presumptions even about nature and our relationship with nature. And there's a very interesting book that really kind of, anyway, the name of it is Thinking in Destiny by Harold Percival. And anyway, I've just put that out as a,
Yeah, I can comment on that. That's a fantastic question, right? Because even when I use something like objective morality, that's why I think it's important to understand murder, always wrong. Rape, always wrong. Assault, theft, coercion, and deception, always wrong. Now, is it that cut and dry? Well, of course not. I mean, we're living in the world. This is the process of being human, where you have conflicting stories in a society where a transgression has happened, right? So yeah, we need to come to find the elements of truth. And there's all kinds of gray areas. It's not so black and white, but with those foundational cores, think about that. Think about if more people in the world understood those basics. It's not just understanding them within their own life. Well, I don't kill anyone. I don't rape anyone, right? There is government institutions. There are people that support government institutions, police and military. People, through their complicity and through their ignorance of this information, support these systems that are murdering, raping, assaulting, coercion, right? I mean, millions and millions of people die every year from democide, death by government. So the information is what is valuable. And also understand what I said earlier, that law of manifestation, karma. Karma means action. What type of action? Reaction. That's what karma is, meaning cause and effect, the energy that comes back. That is a collective, an aggregated compounding effect, right? So we need to keep that in mind. But yeah,
make some noise for Will, everybody. Make some noise for Will. Yeah, great presentation.